ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः. The nectar of thy words revives the scorched spirit of human beings. They purify the sinner and are the life of the holy. To hear them itself is auspicious and peace generating. They are the real givers who spread thy name far and wide. With this Mangalacharan, so we begin today's scripture class, and it is the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. From the last class, 2 weeks ago, we knew that Sri Ramakrishna visited a devotee's house, Ramchandra Datta's. It was actually Sadhan Peeth. His area he made for doing his spiritual practice, a secluded place in Kakurgachi in Calcutta. So he there Sri Ramakrishna went and he enjoyed very much, and he had visited also the area of Surendra Chandra Datta also nearby, Surendra Chandra Mitra also nearby, and also he met one monk who Sri Ramakrishna liked very much and asked him to visit Dakshineswar with Ram Datta once. So that all happened on previous day. The next day, December 27, it is Thursday, 1883. So page 366. The temple garden was filled with the sweet music of the dawn service, which mingled with the morning melody from the Nahabat. Leaving his bed, Sri Ramakrishna chanted the names of God in sweet tones. Then he bowed before the pictures of the different deities in his room and went to the west porch to salute the Ganges. So Sri Ramakrishna woke up in the morning, and in the morning music was being played from Nahabat. Nahabat are the two houses, that the music rooms actually. On one side, on the northern side, the Nahabat was occupied by Holy Mother, and on the southern Nahabat, the same equal distance from the Kali temple, the Nahabat on the southern side, there the music is to be played that time, the live music on the Shanai, the morning music. And at the same time, there was the morning service going on with the conch shell horn blowing and the bell in the temple ringing. And AM described beautifully that it started early in the morning, generally 4:30. That happened, this thing in the morning that they call Mangalarati. And that was going on. And AM poetically describes that all this music mingled together, the sweet music of the morning and the music, the sound of the bell and the conch shell horn in the temple. And it was produced very divine effect in the mind of the listener. Sri Ramakrishna got up and leaving bed, Sri Ramakrishna took the names of God. So he used to repeat the names of God, Kali, Krishna, Rama, Shiva, all different names of God. And his voice was very sweet, that Yam says, very sweet tones, God in sweet tones. And then he got down from his bed and bowed down to the pictures that were there in his on the wall of his room. There were many pictures they say were hanging in the wall of his room, and he bowed down to all the pictures and prayed to God. And there, after that, Sri Ramakrishna came to looking to Ganges. Ganges was on the west side of his room. If you visit Dakshineswar, you'll find. And there he bowed, saluted the Ganges from the west porch. So that was Sri Ramakrishna's daily routine. Whenever he got up, He repeated the name of God, bowed down to the to the deities in the pictures, um, and then used to salute the Ganges. Now, it was early in the morning, so all they had got up early, and they some of the it is winter time though. It was 4:30 or 5 o'clock. So some of the devotees who had spent the night at the temple garden came to the master's room and bowed before him. Early morning, Sri Ramakrishna that started. First, they want to bow down to Sri Ramakrishna and begin their day. Rakhal was staying with the master, and Babu Ram had come the previous evening. Yam had been staying there 2 weeks. All they were there, and they all gathered there and bowed down to Sri Ramakrishna. The first thing to begin the day with the auspicious and blessing of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna said to him, I have been invited to Ishan's this morning. Babu Ram will accompany me, and you too. Him made ready to go with the master. So early morning only, he got the information that he had to accompany. Babu Ram had already been told. Perhaps Rakhal is not going. Sri Ramakrishna didn't say about the Rakhal, and Yam himself got ready to leave with Sri Ramakrishna to Ishan's house. At 8 o'clock, the carriage hired for the master stood waiting in front of the Nahabat. So this is the Nahabat on Holy Mother's, where Holy Mother stayed on the southern side of Sri Ramakrishna's room, or on southern side of the temple of Mother Kali. Uh, on all sides, plants and trees were in flower, and the river sparkled in the sunlight of the bright winter's day. So, still, Yam's description, beautiful description of how the Ganges looked, how the ripples were, sun was being reflected on the ripples of the waves of Ganga, that is being said. Yam is describing that, and it was a very bright mornings. Winter is very joyful in India. It is the time that they look forward to have that wonderful moments, days when it is not scorching sun's heat as we have in summertime. Now, in summer, they are saying in April, it started midsummer, May, June, those are the midsummer. Itself, the temperature has risen there above 40 degrees Celsius in Calcutta and Delhi and Mumbai, everywhere. So winter, they look forward. It's the best of the season in these tropical countries, and that was beautiful morning. And mostly it is always in winter time. Mostly it is very bright, sunny mornings. So it was very beautiful morning that M describes. The master bowed once more before the pictures, and before leaving somewhere, this is customary to bow down before the deity, and he would to bow down to the pictures, and then he would leave the room. Then, still chanting the name of the Divine Mother, he got into the carriage, followed by him and Babu Ram. The devotees took with them Sri Ramakrishna's woolen shawl, wooden cap, and small bag of spices. Sri Ramakrishna used to carry spices that they call mouth fresheners or mukashuddhi, and betua. This is called betua in Bengali. Small stringed pouch. In that, he used to keep some like fennel or some joan they call, and like those things, some spice and the cardamom, clove. He used to keep in that, and that was the spices, the small bag of spices. And as it was winter, they carried the shawl and also the cap if needed in the carriage or while coming, it will be late like that. Sri Ramakrishna had not put on those on his body, but it was. Him and Baburam, the devotees carried, means he himself were carrying perhaps. Sri Ramakrishna was very happy during the trip and enjoyed it like a child. About 9 o'clock, the carriage stopped at the door of Ishan's house. So it was 1 hour ride from Dakshineshwar to Ishan's house on the horse carriage. And Sri Ramakrishna was very happy. What was the conversation? He didn't record. But Sri Ramakrishna joy, and he's enjoying the day and the morning like a child. visiting some devotee's house was very joyful to Sri Ramakrishna, as it was joyful to those who accompanied Sri Ramakrishna, and also very joyful to the devotees who had invited him. All were looking forward. The carriage must have been arranged by Ishan himself. Ishan was an officer and a wealthy person, and mm, he wanted Sri Ramakrishna to visit him. Ishan and his relatives greeted the master and led him to the parlor on the first floor. Ishan was waiting there. And there was no telephone when they will arrive, early in the morning at 9 in winter time. But all were ready and might be waiting for like how long, God knows, maybe 1 hour, just seeing when Sri Ramakrishna will come, because they cannot inform like we have now. Now, what is your ETA, estimated time of arrival? Oh, I'll reach 5 minutes after 9. And then you are ready at 5 minutes after 9, your guest is arriving. But that time it was not that. Sri Ramakrishna will come in the morning. That was known. But when in the morning? 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, not known. So since very morning, they were ready. And they were very eagerly waiting. That waiting for someone like Sri Ramakrishna to come itself was a great occasion for them. All the relatives had gathered there. So it was like a festivity. Whenever Sri Ramakrishna went to someone's house, it was a festival. Sri's Ishan's son was introduced to Sri Ramakrishna. The young man practiced law at Alipur. He had been a brilliant student, having stood first in two of the university examinations, but he was extremely modest, very humble, very brilliant student, and was practicing law in Alipur. Alipur, there is a court, still there is a court in Alipur. So there he practiced. Ishan, Sri with Ishan's son, master to Sris. So, as the son of the householder, so he led Sri Ramakrishna to parlor. Ishan must have gone to arrange other things, some breakfast, some food for Sri Ramakrishna. But first he went. Sris was asked, and also to make Sris acquainted to holy person. That is also the ambition of parents, because Ishan loves Sri Ramakrishna for his holiness. And he wants his son to also be acquainted with him and get connected to the divine person like Sri Ramakrishna. Master starts talking with Sris. What is your profession? What do you do? Sri Ramakrishna. Sris. I am practicing law at Alipur. Master to M. For such a man to be a lawyer? To Sris. Well, have you any questions to ask? Perhaps you want to know how to live unattached to the world. Isn't that so? So he was a law student practicing law, and Sri Ramakrishna actually didn't like that much the lawyers and the doctors. He said they just earn money and they are only after money. They have no other intention. Their goal is how to earn money from the patients or from their clients. Anyhow, that has been the lawyer always. That was the case. And as Sri Ramakrishna found Sri to be very modest, brilliant, and the son of a devotee, and to practice law. So that didn't suit with Sri Ramakrishna's idea of lawyer. But the Sri Ramakrishna, though, said about the lawyer and doctor, but what he meant was those who are greedy type of people, only them. Those who try to serve the patients and try to help the clients and have no greed. Such people, Sri Ramakrishna didn't mind becoming lawyer or doctor or anything. It was more than profession, it was about the attitude of the person. Profession, because in that profession, many go for just for sake of earning money, particularly in the law. So Sri Ramakrishna talked to him that such a person practicing law, but he said to Sri that what do you want to know? So, and he himself suggested something because he was practicing, and perhaps you want to know how to work without attachment. Then Sri answers, under the pressure of duties, people do many unrighteous things in the world. Further, Some are engaged in good work and some in evil. Is this due to their actions in the previous birth? Is that why they act this way? So the most known question, why there people commit evil sin, he must have seen so many people committing bad things as a lawyer, and question must have come, why people commit bad things, what is there? So like that, why they are impelled to do bad? So he asked that question, why people, some people do good actions, some people do bad? What is the factor behind making them do good or bad? And as it is known, this karma or the prarabdha or the impressions from the past life that makes us do good or bad. So that has the common notion. So Sri took it into the theory of karma so that he can get something that he already perhaps knew some about it, about the karma. So he presented that as the question to Sri Ramakrishna. Is it due to their karma in the past life, that some do good work, having the good work result of karma in the past life, some do evil work because they had done some evil in the past life? Is that due to that thing? But how Sri Ramakrishna changes the mood and goes totally different level, you see. Master doesn't go to about the karma theory at all. He says, and he goes about the performance of duties, because he has said why during performing duties why people commit mistake, do evil things. So Sri Ramakrishna says, how long should a man perform his duties? He doesn't go to bad work and evil work and the good work. As long as he has not attained God, highest tuned. How long one has to perform duties? Forget good and bad. Duties itself is binding. How long one has to perform? As long as he has not attained God. Duties drop away after the realization of God. Goal is not performing good duties, goal is realizing God. As long as he has not attained God, duties drop away after the realization of God. Then one goes beyond good and evil. The flower drops off as soon as the fruit appears. The flower serves the purpose of begetting the fruit. Flower is like the duty and the work. And when work is done, you move towards God, God is attained, then no more duty is left. Duty means something you are bound to do. After that, also, after God realization, also, then that person will not work at all. But that person is not bound to perform this or that. He will do by the will of God. Still, he will perform the works. He will be doing good to all, but not as something he has to perform this thing. Not that those all things go away. And there's no bondage of duty to a person who has realized God. He has attained everything in life. No good or bad remains there. And he gives the example of flower and fruit. Fruit appears, and the other parts of the flower drop away. So that's what he says. Like that, the duty also drops once when realize God. So main thing is realization of God. Duty is meant to realize God and purify your heart. So flower helps in formation of fruit. In the flower serves the purpose of begetting the fruit. Purpose of flower is to have the fruit. Purpose of duties is to realize God. Purpose of human life is to realize God. That's what Sri Ramakrishna would say. How long should a devotee perform daily devotions, such as the Sandhya? Sandhya is the daily spiritual practice that is performed not only in the evening. Generally, we call evening as Sandhya, evening prayer as Sandhya Arati, Sandhya Prarthana. But Sandhya means conjunction, when the day and the night meet. The morning is also Sandhya, evening is also Sandhya. And also when morning and afternoon meet, that is also called Sandhya. Three Sandhya, sometimes you'll find. In Ram Prasad song, three Sandhya. Every day, three Sandhyas. Morning, noon, and evening. Dawn, noon, and dusk. And also there is the fourth Sandhya, that is at the midnight. when the time from forenight goes into past night. The midnight is another Sandhya. So midnight people generally sleep, but these 3 nights, 3 times of conjunction of morning with the night, AM with PM, and the day, evening with the night. These are called sandhyas. So people are prescribed to perform spiritual practice at the sandhya time, and there is a conjunction. It's very auspicious moment, and that time one is directed to remember God, do japam, do meditation in the evening or morning, or those who can at the daytime, midday time. So, how long one has to do? So, Sri Ramakrishna says, not that always. These are all the means to realize God. So, when God is realized, then Sandhya also drops away. Let us read what Sri Ramakrishna says. How long should a devotee perform daily devotions such as the Sandhya? As long as his hair does not stand on end and his eyes do not shed tears at the name of God. So you see, very concrete example of spiritual evolution, spiritual growth for a devotee. So God's name is repeated. He himself repeats, he himself repeats, or it is heard. And then he's so much overjoyed that hairs stand. There's goosebump just by listening, goosebump of joy because of joy, by just hearing the name of God. And love of God makes tears come out of eyes. The eyes start shedding tears. So as long when that happens, you repeat the name of God, and goosebump happens, and tears come out from your eyes. Then you have attained that state. These things indicate that the devotee has realized God. So that is the highest stage according to bhakti. The sandhya is culminated there. God has been realized. God's generally in God realization in bhakti there is the vision of God's form, but without even having the vision, when there is so much love for God, whether the God has revealed himself or herself to the devotee or not, but that much of love has already developed in the heart of God, means that is the God realization. It's not easy to have such a feeling all the time. You repeat the name of God and you have so much transformation in your heart. You are so overwhelmed by repeating the name of God, they start shedding tears. So, if that happens, Sri Ramakrishna says, you have realized God. Um, from these, one knows that he has attained pure love of God. Realizing God, um, realizing God, one goes beyond virtue and vice. You see, his question was virtuous work and bilious work. What the difference? Why people perform good action and bad action? Sri Ramakrishna says to go beyond virtue and vice is the important thing. Why you get onto that alone? He goes totally at the very highest of spirituality and says this is the goal of life, to go beyond virtue and vice. To go to God, that is the real goal of life. And he quotes a song from Ram Prasad. I bow my head, says Prasad, before desire and liberation, knowing the secret that Kali is one with the highest Brahman. I have discarded once for all both righteousness and sin, gone beyond good and evil, righteousness and unrighteousness. As Sri Ramakrishna also prayed, this is righteousness, this is your unrighteousness. Take them both. Give me the pure love for thee. I don't want to consider all these things, who is good and who is bad. I don't care that. Now I want pure love for these, unconditional love for thee. That is the thing. And here says, he bowed down the head before desire and liberation. Desire is the binding thing to the world, liberation makes us free. But he bows down to both liberation or desire. He doesn't want even the liberation that is considered liberation as it is. He wants pure love for the lotus feet of the Divine Mother. And he says, I know for certain that what whom I call Kali is same as Brahman. knowing the secret that Kali is one with the highest Brahman. His Kali is highest God, highest Brahman, appearing in form, but also without form, having this nature as her domain, also beyond nature. Trigunamayi, Trigunapara. That is the divine mother. So when she is Trigunamayi, she is Mother Kali or nature or Mahamaya or Shakti. When she is seen as beyond all gunas, she is Brahman. Same being. How we look upon her or it or him, that depends how we perceive that reality. And in Ram Prasad, through his devotion alone, he has understood that Kali is one with Brahman. That Sri Ramakrishna always says. Kali and Shiva are same being seen in a two different ways, and the Brahman and Shakti are same. Brahman and Maya are same. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says. After knowing that, he said, I have discarded once for all both righteousness and sin. Nothing to do, nothing, righteousness or not doesn't matter. I want to be absorbed in thy thought. That is the thing. Always enjoying the love of mother, thinking of the divine mother, thinking of God. That is the thing. What is good and what is bad, you take care of that. What you make me do, I don't care. I want to be with you, merge in your thought. That is my desire. That is my wish to you. So, very high state of spiritual elevation is that. He continues, Sri Ramakrishna continues, the more you advance toward God, the less He will give you worldly duties to perform. So you see how he himself, Sri Ramakrishna said, don't bother about the duties. The one thing is to love God. And the more you love God, duties will be lessened. Duties are not very pleasant. They are, Swami Vivekananda, they're like the scorching sun. Very idea of duty, compulsion to perform something itself is like you are bound to do that. It's not your free will, or you are very happy to perform duties. Duties, very word duty says that something that you ought to do, whether you like it or not. So in most of the cases, people don't like when such force is there, some compulsion is there. There is a matter of dislike or not that very much liking. So it is said that so God will make our duties less the more our love for God increases. So again, the duty, same thing. That's not that when you love God means you will be doing less work. Perhaps God will make you work more, but that will be your free work, work done with joy, not with compulsion. So no sense of duty, but sense of karma yoga, sense of serving others, sense of giving joy to others, not with the compulsion. Then it doesn't become duty. Work remains same, if not more. You may have to work more for others, but there is tremendous joy in by working with that attitude. So Sri says, it is extremely difficult to proceed toward God while leading the life of a householder. Somehow Srish was a young man, but still he had the idea of loving God, doing the sadhana, doing spiritual practice. And there might be, he thought that there is so much compulsion of the duties, going to court, study this, and how will I get time to realize God or worship God? So he finds this dichotomy in life, whether this duty we have to perform for the sake of the family, for the sake of livelihood. And again, the goal of life is the real joy in life is to have devotion to God. So he says very pertinent question that bothers all of us, that it is extremely difficult to proceed toward God while leading the life of a householder. So that is, we often, if you say any here question or answer with any monk anywhere, this is the question that is oft repeated everywhere. How can we do the works, duties, studies, and yet to do sadhana, as you say, meditation, japam, like twice a day? Always we are in a hurry to go to work. How can we keep the mind there? It's very difficult. It is very easy to say do this and do that both, but it is very difficult for a householder. Very important question. Arjuna had asked the same question to Sri Krishna. So Sri is asking the same question to Sri Ramakrishna. And many devotees still ask. It is very eternal question for us. Now let us see what is Sri Ramakrishna's answer to this very important question that often touches our heart, and we experience and feel this problem in our life. Master, why so? What about the yoga practice? So, Abhyasa Yoga. It is said in the Gita as well as in the Raja Yoga, Abhyasa Yoga, Abhyasa Vairagya, Abhyam Tan Nirodha. Control your mind through Abhyasa and Vairagya. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihate. You can have hold on your mind through Abhyasa and Vairagya. Vairagya is dispassion, Abhyasa is practice. Practice that and you will achieve. It is not that impossible. It is possible. Just you need to practice for that, and it is achievable. It is doable that you can think of God, you can worship God, and at the same time you can perform your duties. It is not that for a householder, because they are bound with so many strings to the duties and responsibilities, they will have no time to have the spiritual practice. That is not right. Sri Ramakrishna gives the example how this practice can make time for upasana or spiritual practice. So that is possible if you have to have will and you have to practice. How much to practice? Let us see this. Hmm. I have seen, and he gives the example. Sri Ramakrishna is continuing. At Kamarpukur, I have seen the women of the carpenter families selling flattened rice. Let me tell you how alert they are while doing their business. This what is that? It's a flattened rice. The pestle of husking machine that flattens the paddy constantly falls into the hole of the mortar. The husking machine is a wooden plank, uh, not very broad, sturdy, thick, and wooden plank that goes on a hinge um, uh, that is set at one side. So when it is left, it goes down towards where the mortar and pestle. At one end there is mortar, and pestle is there, and it goes onto the hole, and it hits. At another end, a few people they press it. When they press the end, the wooden that plank that it rises, and it rises quite high. And when they release the pressure from by the of their foot, then it falls down on the hole. On the hole is some paddy, soaked paddy is there, and it hits the paddy with that momentum, with that force. And because there is a small some iron ring is there, and there is a small wooden structure that hits the paddy in the hole. And few people are doing in a rhythmic fashion, and some people they just uh, have to turn the rice with their own hands in the hole, where the rice is there, which is being beaten in a rhythmic fashion by this husking machine. And when if there is little mistake in the person who is turning, his mind is little deviated and keeps the hand for longer, few seconds longer, her hand would be crushed by this husking machine. So Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of how expert these people are. The pestle of the husking machine that flattens the paddy constantly falls into the hole of the mortar. The woman turns the paddy in the hole with one hand, and with the other holds her baby on her lap as she nurses it. How keenly Sri Ramakrishna observed these things, and must be when he was still a young boy that he observed these things. The practice, how she must have learned this, how risky it is. Her hand may be crushed any moment if she is little deviated from the alertness. In the meantime, customers arrive. So many situation multitasking that this lady does. She is nursing her baby, a small baby, with one hand, and the other hand she is turning the paddy being crushed by that musking machine in the hole, where she had to lift the hand before the pestle falls, before that husking machine falls on that hole. Otherwise, her hand will crush. And then customers arrive during when she's turning. And then what she says to them, pay the few pennies you owe me before you take anything more. So she knows how much the customer owes. And customer she owes from the customer. And she asked for that money. That alertness is that work is being done, nursing the child and turning the rice, and all these things are going on. You see, Sri Ramakrishna says, you see, she has all these things to do at the same time: nurse the baby, turn the paddy as the pestle pounds it, take the flattened rice out of the hole, and talk to the buyers. So when the flattened rice is made, it has been taken out, new has to be put. When the husking machine has gone up, very next moment it fall down. And all she does, and still her hand is intact. This is called the yoga of practice. 15 parts of her mind out of 16 are fixed on the pestle of the husking machine, lest it should pound her hand. With only one part of her mind, she nurses the baby and talks to the buyers. Likewise, he who leads the life of a householder should devote 15 parts of his mind to God, 15 out of 16. Otherwise, he will face ruin and fall into the clutches of death. He should perform the duties of the world with only one part of his mind. So it is not impractical advice. It is very practical advice. Little part you put in the world, most of your parts should think of God and be engaged in a spiritual practice. And that one part that is put in the world will do the thing that you want to do. All your duties will be performed. And it will be performed. The more your mind is given to God and is, has become pure by that way, more efficiently your work will be there than to think with you think you do all your work with there is no time to perform spirituality because you have to give all your mind to the worldly duties. But people don't give whole mind to the worldly duties. We always perform our worldly duties with very fraction of the mind. Mind is frittered away in thinking of many things, thinking of songs, stories, TV serial, politics, and stock market, and so many things. And yet you are going and performing your duty, you are working in the bank or teaching there, and all things you are doing, but mind is frittered away. So you do with very little fraction of the mind that you have, do the work. And that also other thing is frittered, and you are worried somewhere, unhappy in something. The stock market fell, and you are very dejected. And with that mind, you work. Of that 1% is also in that condition, and still the work is done. But if you can give the mind 15 out of 15 parts of the mind to God, the mind is purified, happy, peaceful, unagitated, can think very nicely. And that one part becomes the golden one part, and that part will perform your duties more nicely and more successfully than what you did without doing the spiritual practice. That's what Sri Ramakrishna's suggestion is. Always be devoted to God, make your mind pure, and then when mind is purified, of that purified mind, if you put one part, is more powerful than unpurified minds 50% putting in the work. That it becomes more productive, and there will be joy always bubbling in your heart because you are connected with divine in your thought, in your attitude, in your talks. And the one that part you put in the work, that work will produce a very great performance will be there. That's what Sri Ramakrishna's advice: put most of the time in God and little in your duty, and your duty will be done better way. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna says to Sris. A man may lead the life of a householder after attaining knowledge, but he must attain knowledge first. That was Sri Ramakrishna always saying. Why he says that man should attain knowledge or devotion before performing the works of a householder? He again said, if you do not have realized God, have not become spiritually strong enough, and start plunging the world and duty of the world, you will be ruined. World is so difficult place. Maya is so strong. So your life will be ruined. You will be shuddered, and it will be very difficult to perform the duties in a balanced way. You will lose the balance of your head. So gain devotion before you enter the world and worldly duties. Do spiritual practice. Yuvaiva dharma sila syat. That's just saying. When you are youthful, be dharmashila, we perform the dharma, practice spirituality, you gain inner strength and equanimity. Then you go to the world, you can handle the situation, difficult situation. World is a very difficult place. Maya, Sri Ramakrishna says, it is the Vishalakhi do. It is like the whirlpool of Vishalakhi. So one big large water reservoir is there, they call Vishalakhi. So it is like that, you will be drowned into that. So before that you have to learn how to save yourself, and that trick to save yourself from the worldly things is to be spiritually strong. That will save you. You can cross all the difficulties, adverse situations. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says. One should attain knowledge before one enters the life of a householder. You see, what he says is we should do spiritual practice from very young age. Um, Often people say, oh, he's very young. Why should he repeat the name of God? He's just a school student or college student. He has to read so many. He's being given the name of God, and learning and practicing spiritual practice will make his mind focused, concentrated, and his study will be better. And his one line in direction has already been gained, and so he will study better, and his spiritual practice will be better. After studying, he will get job, and he will perform job better. He will enter the householder's life with all the turbulences of householder's life. He will be able to handle that better. So that's why be spiritual from very young age. That's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying is. Um, and he says, but he must attain knowledge first. If the milk of the mind is kept in the water of the world, they get mixed. Therefore, he should turn the milk into curd and extract butter from it by churning it in solitude. Then he may keep the butter in the water of the world. So, butter is the essence of spiritual practice. You know, it's like God realization or your spiritual awareness. When we, without making that condensed spirituality is objectified, or it is concretized, you mix with the world. Spirituality was there, but you could not get that the tangible form, and it just dissipates. It is not seen. It gets mixed with the water of the world. Very beautifully, Sri Ramakrishna gives the example. Rather, make that butter the real essence of your being, and that butter, after it is made, then put in the water. It won't melt. It will have its own existence. It will have its own being will be there. So make the butter while you are still not, you have not entered the world, and you will have your being will be there. Then you will be living very nicely. Your spiritual spirituality will be condensed. Spirituality will be able to live with that. Therefore, you see, spiritual discipline is necessary. When the ashwatha tree is a mere sapling, it must be enclosed by a fence. Otherwise, the cattle will eat it. But the fence may be taken away when the trunk grows thick and strong. Then even an elephant tied to the tree cannot harm it. Just it is about the making oneself strong to deal with the world by practicing spirituality, and gives the example of a sapling of ashwatha tree. It is people tree. commonly called people in Hindi, and Ashwatha in Sanskrit and Bengali. So people tree, when it is small, so it can be eaten up by cattle, by even the goat. But so that's why it has to be covered, surrounded by some haze, so nobody can harm it, no animal can eat it up. So, but when it grows, it's so huge tree that it can even, if you tie an elephant, there will be nothing to do that. So when we are still young, we should be spiritually strong by practice. And when we have attained strength, spiritual strength by practice, then samsara, this adversities and this problem, whirlpool, nothing will matter. We can go beyond that very easily. That's what Sri Ramakrishna is trying to say that. Then even an elephant tied to the tree cannot harm it. Therefore, at the beginning, the aspirant should go into solitude now and then. Spiritual discipline is necessary. You want to eat rice? Suppose you sit down somewhere and say, wood contains fire and fire cooks rice. Can saying it cook the rice? You must get two pieces of wood and by rubbing them together bring out the fire. So Ishan was getting wonderful advice on spiritual practice that is very important. Just by saying theoretically, yes, when time comes, I will practice spirituality. Still, there is a lot of time to be old, and that old time will do. That will not do. That will not. You lose whole your life in the wrong way, suffering whole life, and at the end you try to do that also you will not be able to do. You cannot be peaceful. Mind doesn't work. This untrained mind at the old age will not be able to practice spirituality. How much Ishan's son Sri might have heard this wonderful message of Sri Ramakrishna, but him listened every word of it and noted it down in his mind, and remembered it, and later on noted to make give us the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. That's why M's going was very important. Sri Ramakrishna knew, and he said, M, that you are going with me, because he knew earlier that M is noting down, remembering, and he will give it forth to the public after Sri Ramakrishna is gone. So that Sri Ramakrishna was aware of M's role in his Leela. And that's why he said, you should also go with me to Ishan's house. And and that's why again this importance of practice, that he says you should practice, you should rub the wood and you should bring the fire and then cook, and only then you will have rice. Just knowing that yes, there is God. God is everywhere. Sarvam khalu vidam brahma. You go on saying the bhakyas and mahabakyas. That doesn't change anything of our life. So it is like saying, oh, there is God, there is fire in the wood, let there be fire, let there be rice cooked. And you have not put the fire, burn the fire in the wood, you have not put the rice there, rice is not cooking. How will you eat? You cannot eat. It will be enough no use for you. So bring out the fire. You must get two pieces of wood, and by rubbing them together, bring out the fire. That's how originally we used to. The fire was brought out in that way. When there was no matches and the lighters were there, that was the condition. The two pieces of wood were rubbed. Aronika, they was called, and some wood were very hard. And the sparks used to come by rubbing, and that was made into fire, and then the fire was burned. So rub the woods to practice. Go and make practice of that. Then only you will find the things happening. That's what it is said. Rubbing the wood is symbol of doing spiritual practice. By eating siddhi, one becomes intoxicated and feels happy. Another example of siddhi. Siddhi is like narcotics or something. So like opium they used to eat that time. By eating siddhi, one feels intoxicated and feels happy. That's why they eat this siddhi, or all this called bhang. Siddhi is bhang. So this present day cannabis, in the cannabis was used in India, in not only for smoking hemp, but as the bhang, as it is called. The green leaves were crushed and it was mixed with water and drank, and the people used to be intoxicated just to feel happy by intoxication. Some people used to do that, but for that, Sri Ramakrishna says one has to drink that. Otherwise, how will you be intoxicated? Again, saying you have to practice spirituality to find God and to find joy. Otherwise, it will be just talk. Therefore, by eating siddhi, one becomes intoxicated and feels happy. But suppose you haven't eaten the stuff or done anything else with it. You simply sit down somewhere and mutter, siddhi, siddhi. Will that intoxicate you or make you happy? This is one example that Sri Ramakrishna gave. Um, like uh, there, what he said, Kabir Das said about this thing, Kanaka Kanakate Shauguni Madakata Adhikai. Yahi khaye baurai nar, wahi paye baurai. So, like this, Siddhi makes one intoxicated. He goes out of mind. Here is about the joy to, if you want to get the joy of intoxication, have that if you are habituated. Otherwise, intoxication makes one crazy. It is not to be eaten. That's what Kabir Das says. And he compares two things. One Kanaka, there are two words Kanaka. One Kanaka is like the bhang, another Kanaka is gold or wealth. So, which of these two is more intoxicating? Bhang or wealth, money? So he says the bhang, the money is more intoxicating than bhang. Then why he says? He says that yahi khaye baurai anar, wahi paye baurai. By eating that bhang, one becomes crazy, goes out of mind, becomes intoxicated. But that is about the bhang. But money is more intoxicating. Just by getting money, one becomes crazy, goes out of mind, becomes egotistic, doesn't remain same person. So money is more intoxicating than even the narcotics that he says about the don't try to be wealthy and proud, be proud of well being a money man, rich man is difficult. Jesus said is for a rich person it is difficult to go to heaven, go to the place of God. So that's why for a camel can be put through the eye of the needle, but for a rich man to go heaven is impossible, more difficult than even that. The very first example itself is so difficult and seems impossible. But he says for a rich man to go to heaven is more impossible. Why he says that? Because money, wealth, gold, they all bring pride, ego. And when the ego enters a man, the man doesn't remain same person. In case of Sri Ramakrishna, there was one person who used to come to Sri Ramakrishna, used to listen to his talk. And after that, he was not seen for many days. And then one day, Sri Ramakrishna had gone to Purnagar and different across the Ganga with Hriday. And he saw that person was there in the Ganga. And that person who was devoted to Sri Ramakrishna as to revere him, that he said, "Hello, how are you?" Like that, without any respect. Sri Ramakrishna said to Hriday quietly, Hriday, he had got money. He has become rich now just by his attitude and talk, because money turns the head. So if you are not aware, humility goes, pride comes, one becomes egoistic, the person doesn't remain same. And Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when if frog has a 1 rupee coin, then he says even to an elephant that passes, "Oh, you set your foot on my hole, I will see you," like that, because he got a 1 rupee coin. Just to say, money brings so much of pride. One has to be very careful about this thing. This pride, ego, takes away the humanity from us, and humility goes away. When there is no humility, there is no real person. That person has been changed. The person is not there. So that's why Kabir Das said, wealth is more intoxicating than the intoxicant, that narcotics. And that's what he said. And Sri Ramakrishna here says in a different way that one has to try to get the thing done, then only one gets what it wants. Practice, work, hard work, effort has to be put to get the thing done. Similarly, when to have a narcotic or have a bhang, you need to work out. So how much more work you have to do to have God in your life? So sadhana is necessary. Sadhana karana chahiye manava, bhajana karana chahiye. Mirabai used to say that beautiful song that you have to do spiritual practice. Ramakrishna emphasizing on that, on the work. You may learn a great deal from books, but it is all futile if we have no love for God and no desire to realize Him. A mere Pandit without discrimination and renunciation has his attention fixed on woman and gold. The vulture soars very high, but its eyes are fixed on the charnel pit. So, reading books are good. Swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam, says the Upanishads. You should not be slackened in the process of learning and also in preaching. Swadhyaya, self study. You should study. So that is very important. But one danger is there after reading a great deal of books. If a person thinks, I know much more than that, and that person is ignorant, I am a Pandit, I am a scholar, I know this philosophy, this book, I have read all the Gita and the Bhagavatam and the Upanishad, and that person is just new, what does he know? So, like that thing, if pride comes, everything is lost. This pride is so dangerous. There is the story of a boatman and a scholar. So, one scholar was crossing the Ganga and he asked the boatman, only two persons were there. He said, hello, have you read the Gita? He said, where do I read Gita? I don't know anything. I'm unlettered, I'm illiterate. So he said, oh, you have not read Gita. Their half life is all gone, doomed. You have not studied. So beautiful scripture. After some time, he said, have you read the Upanishads? I said you I'm illiterate. I have not read anything. I cannot read anything. How do I know that what you said? I do not even know the word that you said. You have not read Upanishad. So you have not read the beauty of this scripture. Your one fourth life, a three fourth life is all gone in vain. And at that time, what happened? A storm came, big, huge wave. And then the boatman said, Babu, do you know swimming? So he says the boat was rocking and it was almost going to capsize because huge storm came. He said, no, really, I don't know swimming. Oh, you don't know swimming? Then your whole life is gone now. Be ready to be drowned. You have not learned the swimming. You are saying me have learned not. That type of pride comes, impractical pride. And the pride, if we do not do the spiritual practice, that pride takes place. Those things, studies will help us in doing the spiritual practice, making things clear. And that has to bring the humility. More we study, more we should be humble. Vidya dadati vinayam. That's what our scripture says. If something you have learned a lot, and you have not become humble, you have not learned anything. It has become counterproductive. Vidya should give vinaya, that there is so much of knowledge. It should enlighten your intellect and give you the joy of learning, and would bring humble that the, because you become more devoted, more you know there are so many things. Newton is to such a great scientist. The people said you have learned so much, so many inventions, so many discoveries you have made. He said, what I have done, I have collected few pebbles on the ocean beach and not done anything. So many things to learn, but learning has not been enough. So you feel yourself more humble. That is real humility. And if it is about the Shastras, then you know everywhere is God and nothing of God you have yet learned. And if you have gone little devotion, you become more humble, that because of God's grace, I have become little devotion has come to me. You become more devoted to God, more humility comes. So humility is very important. In the Gita also, when Sri Krishna was teaching Arjuna about that God resides in every being, and he gives the panorama of different beings, and so highest person and lowest person, including all animals. And the highest person, how he says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane. He's a learned person, Brahmana, and he is endowed with all the knowledge, learning, and that is not enough. He says Vinaya Sampanna. He is decorated with humility. If there is no humility, Vidya and Vidya Sampanna Brahmana, that is no learned person. Vidya Vinaya Sampanna Brahmana is the highest kind of erudite person who is really humble. That's why this humility is very important. So these reading books, if they bring arrogance and pride, then it's futile. But it is all futile if you have no love for God and no desire to realize Him, just to learn the things for the sake of learning and for the sake of being said that I am that great, and I to say that to just glorify yourself. And it says. Uh, a mere Pandit is one who learns a lot. Mere Pandit, without Vinaya, without humility, without desire to love God, without desire to practice what he learned in the books, without discrimination and renunciation. All he talks about the glory of detachment and the glory of renunciation, but doesn't practice anything of that. So those are like Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of vultures, because vultures they fly quite high in the sky, but their mind is fixed on the carrions, on dead bodies, put on the charnel pit, on some field that place in the village where the all dead bodies they put in the charnel pit where the vultures eat. Vultures are searching for that, though they soar high in the sky, like that Pandits, though they have studied a lot, yet they look with all their learning, they look for this human praise and the wealth and enjoyment of the world, worldly enjoyment. So Sri Ramakrishna compared them with the vulture, giving such wonderful instruction to Sris. Still, many people have not gathered to Sris. He has given the gist of spiritual practice and how one should perform one's life. One should form one's life by having the love of God and practicing renunciation and dispassion in life, and having the growing love of God by spiritual practice, whatever has been taught, whatever is your family tradition, even by doing little puja, attending arati, repeating God's name in the evening. All this makes your life very fruitful, and the life becomes rich when we add spirituality to our life in the world. All works, position, all that is there. The skill that you have learned in your universities and colleges, plus you have spirituality, wealth of spirituality, whatever way. Worship, attending arati, repeating God's name, doing meditation, having vichara that God alone is real. Anything of your spiritual practice will enrich your personality, and such type of person becomes not themselves very peaceful and happy. Such type of person, they take their happiness and peace wherever they go in the society, wherever they mix in the society. They become a blessing to the humanity when a person becomes spiritually aware by practicing spirituality. And spirituality cannot be gained without practice. All this grace of God, that God is coming to you, God comes 10 steps towards you, all that is, if you put forth first step towards God, then only God comes 10 steps towards you. You have to walk few more. God will come faster to you, but you have to walk, you have to practice. That's Sri Ramakrishna's today's talk was all about the glory of spiritual practice, glory and need of the spiritual practice. Thank you very much. Now the closing chants. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum पादपद्मे तयो श्रित्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः. Thank you all for joining the class, and good night to all of you. Next Friday, we will have the class on the Uddhava Gita. See you then again. Thank you. Bye.